is Moira.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Moira. And this week we read Peter Pan by
J.M. Barrie.
And we are not going to talk about the movie Hook. Even though I want to talk about the movie Hook because it's literally like...
Don't make promises we can't keep, Moira.
Our top 5 movie of all time.
Guys, this is one of those books that people typically have not read, much like Alice in Wonderland, because it's a classic and we've all seen the movie, we all know the story.
Yeah.
It's like, why read the book?
Peter Pan wasn't that long.
No, it's not long at all.
It just takes a while to get the style of writing.
It's one of those books that it does take a little bit of time to get into the style of writing because it's so unlike other things.
Yes.
But once you're in it, it's fairly simplistic.
Oh, totally.
It's just, it has its own like rhythm and
it's not super realistic.
I know.
I know it's a movie about a guy who loses his shadow. I know, I get it. But
it's
like,
not realistic.
when you read it, when you see it in a movie, you're like, okay, in a cartoon movies especially, you're like,
yeah,
oh, this is whatever. But I feel like when I'm reading a book, like, wait, the dog can't do that. Like, she can't be a Nana. And when a boy loses his shadow, it's much easier to believe, at least for me, it is a movie. It's specifically the cartoon.
Yeah, I think so. Especially, this is like, it's fantasy, but it's like, it means it in the book. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's so beyond, like, the dog takes care of the children. It's very serious. Like, the parents, it's part of the dog's job.
But it's so realistic.
Exactly.
And that's where I think I got thrown off. Where I was like, when I read the book, I was like, oh, wait, that wasn't just a cartoon thing. That was a choice made by the author. That was like, no, I'm going to make this very fantastical, but set in a very realistic time and place.
The book is much more about Wendy than it is about Peter and the Lost Boys. It's just like the whole theme of the book has so much to do with motherhood and her going from, you know, that journey from being like a little girl to an adult, and she kind of skips over the stuff in between in the book, of course. I mean, it's got its own limits, but she goes straight from like that childhood thing to motherhood with the kids, with the Lost Boys, and maybe that's my perspective being a girl. Maybe like if a boy reads it or a man reads it, you might not have the same take on it, but I just felt that way. I was just like, oh, this book is hardly about Peter Pan at all.
Yeah. You know what her real name was?
Wendy Moira, Angela Darling.
Yep. Yeah, I'm like, oh, that was me. But then they say Moira, I'm like, that's not my name.
Well, that's so funny because when I first met you, of course, everybody thinks,
oh yeah,
Moira spells it like Moira, but it's Mora.
Yeah.
And when I first met you,
that's how I pronounce it. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So my sister was little. My sister's name is Jordana. When she was little, my mom called her Jordana.
Oh, she just like switched it?
Yeah. It's so weird. Yeah, because like you hear in her Mackey videos, it's like Jordana, but it's Jordana.
That's funny.
Isn't it funny? So maybe I was Moira.
Maybe.
I don't know.
You have identity crisis.
Oh, I know. And I
get it. Identity crisis. M-O-I-R-A.
Oh my god, when I read that joke about the open book, I didn't know that's a joke.
It does. Why do I make the best worst jokes? We were off camera, not filming yet. Moira, we were talking about, oh, should we ever talk about like what we do for a living on camera? And Moira's like, I'm an open book. And I was like,
da 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 da. That's really
anyway. So back to Peter Pan. I think this book has, in the story in general, has staying power. Not sure all of the reasons, but like it's the idea, of course, of never having to grow up and how like part of us always wishes that.
Yeah, but it's so funny because when you're a child, all you want to do is grow up.
We're such idiots when we're kids.
Such idiots. Like you're like, I literally remember refusing naps in kindergarten. I remember like no, and now I'm like, please.
Please
give me a nap.
Please, huh? 5 more minutes. I think that's why people keep recreating the story too. I mean, of course, there's the Disney cartoon, which has such a great score. Let's just talk about that music.
Yeah.
There's Hook, of course, in the 90s.
Best movie ever.
The early 2000s, around 2004.
Jack.
Run home.
Yeah,
run home.
We're talking about Maggie Smith because I thought she was old for like ever, and I'm like, why does Maggie Smith?
Maggie Smith was born that way.
She literally was like just aged and then stopped aging, and then was like 90 looking years old for like 30 years.
Yeah,
but that was just makeup. Now that I look back, I'm like, oh, they just put makeup on.
But like, really, it's still that makeup holds up. Like she looks good and old.
She looks, yeah.
I mean, Gwyneth Paltrow being the young version.
Oh my god,
how funny is that?
Yeah, I totally forgot.
So many faces in that movie. Peter Pan was done again in the early 2000s, live action, like 2004, something like that. So there have been so many iterations of Peter Pan. My dog just brought me his ball. What a joke. Come here, darling. Wendy, Moira, Angela, Darling.
That's Jean Grey's middle name.
Which one?
Jean Grey, Darling, Paris.
That's adorable.
When we sold that to his family, that's white trash.
Now's not the time, darling.
Go.
Come here. You gotta stay out of frame. You gotta talk about the book. Gil, speaking of Peter Pan
Is
syndrome,
that fish?
Gilead has never grown up. So lay down.
Rufio. Rufio. Oh my god, didn't hope that food fight scene.
I know. You're doing it, Peter. You're using your imagination. In the book, the mermaids are freaking terrifying. They're like terrorists for like Peter and the Lost Boys and all this. They're just like freaky little creatures. And in the movie, the Disney movie, they make them like so sensual and all this stuff, which I guess like a mermaid in and of itself is like a sensual kind of idea. But I remember just always thinking they were like the prettiest things, those mermaids. And then I'm reading the book and I'm like, they're evil little
terrorists.
They are. They're just sneaks. I guess maybe that parallels like sirens from the Odyssey. Now we're talking literature. So when it comes to books like Peter Pan, I just think that it's important to read books like this because they inform a ton of our pop culture. For one, the name Wendy came out of the book Peter Pan. At least according to pop culture, that's like a thing that like it was not a name until that book was written, that he made it up.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
I wonder how many people are named Wendy from that
I know.
era.
These stories keep getting adapted, but somebody wrote it originally, and I think that we owe it to them to read it how they intended it to be to begin with.
And I think since we do know those stories, we're like, we don't need to read it. But seriously, the book is, reading it is so different than watching a cartoon or watching Hook or watching the live action musical, which I heard wasn't that good. It's just a different experience, you know, and it takes a while to get into how he wrote the book. And I think it's because it was from the early 1900s. You know, it's a really cool thing to experience, and it's not that long. It's a good, quick little read.
It is a quick read. I had never read it myself. My husband read it to me. It's like something we do once in a while.
Which is so freaking cute.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Chris, read me books!
The thing is, sometimes too, he'll be like, you read to me tonight, and I'm like, I'm not. The thing is, I find it so hard for two reasons. One, I love when he does it, and for two, I'm always like, I don't do it as well. Like, he does all the voices.
Does he?
Yeah, he's
That's
like, well, he's
cool.
an actor, so like he does all the voices and everything, and it's just not the same experience. So I find it. So he reads me the books, and he read this one, and it was just, it's such a magical experience. So if you have somebody to do that with,
You should do it. We read the Hunger Games together, and then we read the Steve Jobs book. So that would be really interesting to hear.
Steve Jobs' voice.
Do the Steve Jobs book for me.
Amazing.
That would be a lot of fun.
You want to stick with like the fiction for sure. Elliott, he read Harry Potter to me too.
Oh my god, that's like the best book
amazing.
to read.
Yeah.
Assuming with different voices.
Absolutely, did all those so good.
Next week we're going to be reading Jeannette Walls, The Silver Star.
Comment down below if you have any suggestions of books that we should check out. We always love hearing what you're reading. We'd love to talk about some of those. So yeah, that sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah. See you later.
Bye guys.
Bye. Gilligan, you want to say hi, darling? He's been just patiently sitting down here this whole time. Say hello.
Hello, Gilligan.
Question.
Did you like Peter Pan?
Will you read me the book? Question. Do I have to grow up? No, you don't.
You do have to twerk though, Gilligan.
Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle.